Bonjour à tous. Je suis Andrew Hall du MLQE. Je vois qu'il y a 6 participants pour le moment. On va peut-être attendre Magdalena un peu 2-3 minutes que les participants se connectent.
Bien sûr, oui.
Nous attendons une trentaine de personnes. Bonjour Gilbert, bonjour Christophe, bonjour Sadia, bonjour David, bonjour Sina. Alors, une dizaine maintenant. Voilà. C'est une petite minute peut-être supplémentaire. Alors peut-être avant de commencer, il est vrai que ce webinaire a été annoncé en français. On n'a aucun souci pour le faire en français, semble-t-il. Peut-être un peu plus simple pour Magdalena de le faire en anglais. Est-ce que je peux vous demander, aux 10 personnes qui sont déjà là, d'écrire dans le chat si vous préférez le français ou l'anglais? Qu'est-ce qui vous intéresse le plus? Sachant que je pense que Magdalena, tu me es plus aucun problème. Anglais, ça va. Aucun problème pour passer en anglais. OK. No problem for English. So I guess we sorted, aren't we? Both.
The slides are in French, but I can speak English, so we
It's
adapt.
up to you, Magdalena. What is the easiest for you?
The easiest English is definitely easiest to speak about design thinking because there are so many keywords that
Indeed.
translation in French always sounds a little bit bizarre.
Indeed. Okay, so I propose to start. So once again, I am Andrew Hall. I'm part of the MLQE, the Mouvement Luxembourgeois de la Qualité et de l'Excellence. And Magdalena is here today with us to present the technique de créativité et d'innovation. So as part of this webinar, as discussed once again 2 weeks ago and last week, is part of the 4 sessions regarding quality and innovations. The first one was about the concept around the development, tool developments or other developments. That was made by Gilbert Hirtz, who is here with us today. The second one, what was Christophe Alter, who presented us the trees methods. I'm afraid I wasn't there that time, but I heard a very good session animated by Christophe. And the third one is, like I said, Magdalena will present us the technique de créativité et d'innovation. Once again, I'd like to remind you that it's 4 sessions, 4 cycles of quality and innovations, and the last one is so we are expecting you guys also to be there. I'm expecting a very good session next week, but at the moment I will give the mic to Magdalena for her presentations. But in the meantime, during the presentations, please ask all your questions using the chat box, and we will go through them by the end of the sessions. We will keep something like 10 minutes or something like that to be able to answer all your questions. if that's okay with you guys. So thank you, have a lovely time, and see you in about 15 minutes. And Magdalena, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew, and welcome once again to everyone. I hope that we will have a nice 1 hour introduction, brief introduction to design thinking. This is the technique of creativity that we use for innovation, mainly for innovating on products and services. And as I said, slides are in French, but please feel free, like Andrew said, to add some questions, to ask some questions in chat, and we can definitely connect on them at the end of the session. But also, in the meantime, I will have 1 or 2 questions to ask to you via chat window. So just make sure that you know where chat window is and be ready to use it. So my name is Magdalena Jakubowska. I work as a service designer and design thinking facilitator. And I also coach people on creativity. And recently, more and more, we talk about imagination, because we realize that imagination is an condition to implement the scenarios of the desired future scenarios in business and in sustainable business as well. I always underline 2 private elements about me that always remind me about entrepreneurship. So as entrepreneur, running my company since 5 last years, I always find these analogies to gardening, because it reminds me really of planting, waiting, being patient, taking decision what to kick off, what to keep, how to nourish the projects that we kick off, and also how to clean later on after what is already redundant. And similar impression and with my surfing experience. So I'm surfing since 3 years. I'm really starting, and here the analogy with business is always a trial and error. There is no surf without falling, without standing up again, and without trying again. And I really see these analogies in design thinking that I'm going to introduce you, and also in entrepreneurship in general. As I already mentioned, 5 years ago, together with my colleague, we set up the Art Square Lab. We are the first service design agency here in Luxembourg. Service design, that means that we are not focused on product design, but on services. So we develop new services, or we fix services that are already in place, but somehow do not work. We work definitely with human-centered methodologies like design thinking, that simply help businesses to put user, customer, client in the center of our strategy, or thinking about future and current services. I will just add that since last year, we are also Société d'Impact Sociétal, so social impact company, because we share our knowledge with largely here in Luxembourg with educational sector, and we contribute to development of education, to innovation in educational sector here in Luxembourg. So we think it's our social duty to share the design thinking knowledge that we have. But about business, in business we can speak about 3 pillars of our activities. First one is development on human resources, so human resource development, and here we are a training provider. So we share our design thinking knowledge with the fundamentals training, with another type of training that is called facilitating of co-creation or innovation leadership. The middle pillar is something what I will discuss with you today during next 50 minutes. So product and service design, and here elements of design thinking. So how to connect to the clients, how to do the user research, how to generate idea, prototype, and then test new ideas. And on the right side, globally, we use also service design thinking to change management and projecting future scenarios, projecting sustainable future scenarios, and using service design thinking more for strategic development. We work with various clients in public and private sector. This is important to say that design thinking that I'm going to describe today is already proven as a method that works for businesses, but also for public sector. As we can all imagine, the services like transportation, education, food supply, these are all the services that we tackle in our work. Today, I'm going to share with you, and I already mentioned, the biggest keyword for today is this user centricity. That is the biggest element of design thinking. So that means that in this approach, we not only think how to develop our business, how to develop new products or services, but we go let's say, deeper into thinking for whom we develop products and services, who our client is, what do we know about the client, and how can we include our client into this creative process of building products and services. So this is something what happens very often. This is in Polish. I couldn't find it in English. For sure it exists, or in French, but we know this situation in private life, but very often also in business, unfortunately. Sometimes we develop products or services that looks very nice, but they look nice only from our perspective. And then to the end user, like in this case to the baby, we offer this, let's say, not so pleasant view. So we keep this poster in our office, and we always measure or try to continuously check if our products or services look nice only for us, if they are also desirable, usable by the end users themselves. So I mentioned user centricity, but I wanted to quickly ask you, what do you think design thinking is? So if you could finish this sentence in chat, I would be curious if you can just throw quickly couple of associations, words that come to your head to finish the sentence. Like design thinking is, and ... Please add. Feel free to add some words to finish this sentence. I see somebody's typing. That makes me always happy. So I know that you are there and that you listen. There is no design thinking. Christoph says it's a toolkit. Very important. There are many design thinking tools. I will mention some of them today. Inclusion de tous les parties. Definitely, Andrew, with design thinking is not a one-man show. It's a collaborative process, and here we already mentioned very important part. And Sibyl says a way to create new designs through a specific process. Yes, a way to create new products or new services. We will talk more about the services for our clients and our companies through a specific process. And this is very important. Indeed, you mentioned here the most important features. Design thinking is indeed a process, but it also offers a number of tools, and we can take it as a toolkit. That's why it's interesting to not our title for today is techniques, creative techniques, and sometimes we think for creative techniques we need to have creative people in a team, so those who are maybe a bit more artistic, but it's not exactly like this. With design thinking we are very much thinking, it's kind of thinking out of the box. It's ability to be human-centered, its ability to be empathetic, not only to be, or not at all to be artistic and productive in this artistic sense. So here we have Tim Brown from IDEO, the design field from the USA, collaborating with Stanford University, where design thinking was not developed, maybe it existed since ever, but it was elaborated in the USA. And Tim Brown says design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation. So this is a human-centered, already mentioned a lot, but this is an approach, it is a process. We can ask ourselves, when in our regular business we are focus on the user, or maybe in general, if we ever include our end user, the user of our products or services, in creation of these products or services, if we create any kind of situations where we consult our end user. This is the question that we very often ask at the beginning of design thinking process to different companies, and very often they would say, no, actually we only test our products with the users at the very end. Or they might say, yes, we run maybe focus groups, so from time to time, or we have questionnaires, and with questionnaires we ask our end users about their particular opinion about the products, and that's very often it. So design thinking creates, give us tools how to be more user-centric, how to consult customer on each stage of creating the product or the service. And there are 5 different stages, etap identified by IDEO, and very often when you talk about design thinking, you would refer to these 5 stages. And we would start with the blue one, which is the empathize element. So this is the moment where we try to understand who our user is and what kind of problem he or she has. And in green phase, we have define. So define would be more on really defining, is the problem we try to solve for the customer, is the job we try to do for the customer, the one we, with our product or service, the one we assumed is problematic, or is it something else? So very often when we ask customers for their opinions, when we observe how they behave, when we try to find out what their needs are, then we can better define customers' need. Instead of saying that they need a toaster, we would say they need to heat bread. Instead of saying that they need a new car, we could say that they need to move from A to B. So actually it's not a car is a problem, but mobility is a problem, or not a toaster is a new toaster is a problem. But we might ask ourselves, how might we create new way to heat bread so that customers' problem will be solved? After, when we have this definition, then we move towards ideation. So we generate ideas, and I would like to pay your attention that far too often we identify creativity with only this one moment, this ideation. We would say in our companies that most creative people are those who generate idea generators. Sometimes between us in our studio we say someone who vomit ideas, because it's somewhat I'm sure we can identify this kind of collaborators in our teams. At the same time, it's important to see, and design thinking, these 5 processes show us that creativity is not only about this idea generation. It's definitely also about analytical skills, about being able to define the problem and being able to empathize, co-feel, to understand the user. So some kind of research competence is also part of creativity. And then from ideation, when we generate a lot of ideas, it's still not enough. We don't want to leave our conference rooms or workshop rooms just having post-its on the wall. Sometimes we would say design thinking is about colorful post-its on the wall. But as you know, we open window, post-its fall down, and then all the ideas are gone. So it's not enough. With design thinking, we say, let's bring ideas to life. Let's prototype them. And here, the prototype, I will show you in a moment what we understand as prototype. This is basically bringing, visualizing ideas in a way that somebody can not only hear my description of the idea, but also to understand, this is how it looks like. This is how I can interact with your service. It's not just description, written description. It's something more. It can be a model, a mock-up, drawing, some kind of very first prototype. And last but not least, prototypes can be tested. So we build prototypes to let them to collect feedback on our idea. We throw prototypes, we get back to end user or to internal users, maybe our colleagues, to ask them, okay, what's your opinion about this service? Does it really work? Before we will go into details about prototypes and idea generation, to summarize, you might wonder by now, okay, it's great to have this creative process. So to understand that design thinking can bring some movement, creative movement. But other value of design thinking, it's definitely this connection to end user and understanding the needs, being closer to the user, as we already mentioned, collaborative process, because this is not a process that I would do myself being alone in one room, because I need to connect to the colleagues, to different opinions. I need to generate ideas with others. I need to build prototypes also with others. And there is, of course, a big potential to innovate, because through all this process, new ideas are appearing. We all know the situation when inside our companies or organizations, institutions, the same idea are coming back all the time. So sometimes we have a feeling that we are sitting in the closed room, and again our colleagues suggest the same ideas, and we have some kind of creativity blocks, or we look what concurrents are developing, and then we think that this is what is coming. But design thinking offers this chance to kind of extend this gremium who decides about new ideas, and invite also clients to co-create the ideas, to give us hints what they would need to see, what they would need to have. On the strategic perspective, from strategic perspective, and this is very important to also see how design thinking can contribute to our business strategy. We can always see this through some kind of, I would summarize this five points with waste reduction. So by knowing the needs of final users, We can, of course, satisfy their needs or try to satisfy their needs with new products, and we ensure that these products will be actually used. We see high numbers for digital solutions that are developed, like digital apps, nearly the answer for everything nowadays. Let's create one more app. Creating an app might be not that easy, but might be feasible, possible, but the challenge is to make people use it. And with customer-centric methodologies like design thinking, we shift our perspective, and instead of making people want to use our app, we would make our app to be usable by people. So we would understand first what problems are we solving. What is also important here on the waste management or prevention of wasting time, money, resources. Of course, with design thinking, we can also cut some redundancies, avoid duplications, and check what actually can we kick off from our process or from our product or service creation. Very often we see, I show you the circle, so this 5-etap in circle, very often we see them in line, but here it's important to say that you can start application of design thinking or working with design thinking process, not necessarily from empathy to test. It doesn't have to be linear. You can tell today that you have already a prototype of the idea. You have some MVP, minimum viable product, that will be tomorrow going to the market. So we might decide, okay, why not to plan a good experiment to test which functionalities, which elements of your product or service are essential, which ones should stay. Let customers decide. Let's ask customers punctual questions to be able to understand and to iterate later on this product to understand what should be changed. We might also see with prototype that prototype doesn't work, that our MVP doesn't function. People overlook some function, people don't understand how to do it, or think that this application does not do any particular job for them. We always say that as customers, we hire or fire the services and products. If you would look at your smartphone now and you would see, oh, I have a couple of apps that I'm using, you might easily identify which one you use very often. So you hire it to do some job for you, to communicate with others, to help you to find a way through the traffic, to join some community of runners or like Strava, for example. And you might also identify the products that you kicked out, that you fired, because you say, it's not really interesting for me anymore. I kicked out one or the other app because my needs were not anymore fulfilled. So this is also an element of looking at the processes, at the services and or products from this perspective of what needs do they fulfill for us. And now, for a couple of slides, I would like to go a little bit deeper, because you might think, how do I do this empathy in reality? If in your company you decide, I would like to get connected to the clients a little bit more than till now, but what can I actually do? This empathy process in reality comes to something what we call user research, or sometimes you see it as UX research if you are more in digital, in IT, in digital product development. then you might ask yourself the question, okay, how do I conduct this kind of research, and what for? So as we already said, we would like to understand behaviors, preferences of our clients, and also their pain and gain points. So we would say, what is the pain of my client? What is the gain of my client? In which moment I give some relief to the client's pain, and in which moment how can I think about reducing this pain? What can we change in the customer experience so that this process, for example, transportation, or for example, being in the some waiting situation. If you run a business where you have a front officer in front of the client, where you have reception, welcome desk, and people waiting, like in some financial services, we might have some agencies, people are waiting. How could we optimize this process? So we are always in user research searching for so-called insights. Insights are aha moment, or some moment of truth, moment, MOT, moment of truth, when we understand, oh, okay, this is what our customer struggle with. We have here one of this example of such a struggle. So we all know this medical packaging with special cap that serves as a security, so that children, for example, do not access it. And then on the right side, we see the picture how user use this. User who has arthritis, I think it's called in English, so some problem with hands. It's not able to open anymore. Older person, it's not able to open anymore this kind of bottle. So she or he would use this kind of device, this electric saw, or maybe it's to cut bread in the past, to open this kind of bottle. So user research and empathy, applying empathy, helps us to catch, to fish out, to catch this kind of moments, to identify where really the pain points of our customers are. That would make us definitely to rethink this product and think how might we create a safe, however safe and accessible product to serve the needs of the customers. So how can we actually get this information from our end users? How do they behave? What are their needs? We usually would employ three different elements, and these are interviews. We might say, let's go and talk to some of the end users. We might also say, let's go and observe them in context, where they use our product or service. Or we would also say, let's immerse ourselves in this product. You know, the method of secret shopping. Sometimes or safari research, so called. We might call the service our service and pretend we are the user, just to see how we are served, what is the experience on the other side. So this immersion is also one of the way of grabbing the experience we offer to the customers. With the interviews, very often we would use the tool why. It's important to underline that we, with design thinking, we are very often talking about some kind of ethnographic research nearly. So we are curious. One of the creativity element is being curious and asking open questions. So we would ask customers, why do you use, this is the picture from our research for Pizza Hut we have implemented in 2018-19. And at the time, we interviewed 30 customers and non-customers of Pizza Hut to ask them how do they feel in the ambience of the restaurant. Do they feel that it's fast food, or is it a restaurant? We were trying to place Pizza Hut somewhere on the line between fast food and restaurant type. And we asked the following questions. So as you see, the questions were very, very open, and they do not concern only Pizza Hut per se. In these interviews, we try to understand how customers, what their habits are, in which moment do they come to Pizza Hut, in which moment of their customer journey. And sometimes another tool that we apply is to ask our customers, tell us a little bit more about you and your habits, show us your bag. This is another tool to learn a little bit more about the customer in direct context, to provoke some kind of storytelling. Interviews, as described, this is one way of connecting with the clients. Another very known, and I'm sure you already apply it, are the focus groups. Focus groups allow us to bring more clients together at the same time and to initiate similar conversation. However, we can imagine that in focus groups we have naturally we have to consider the group dynamics. Sometimes we have people who are more shy, sometimes those who are more loud speakers, so we might lose a couple of important voices. Here is an example of observation from Pizza Hut. So what we are observing are the activities, is the environment, are the interactions, and objects, and of course people. So how people interact with each other, how people interact with objects, what is the environment, how people behave, are they lost in the space, can they get orientation. Of course, here it's a physical situation, but very often we do it also in the digital context. So we might also observe how people use our digital product. Do they really find their way, or are they a little bit lost? What we are trying also to draw is so-called parcours client, so customer journey. After understanding from the research how people use our product, what habits they have, we might we would like to draw some kind of images, and this is not only about creative drawing, but this is about identifying the flow not from our business operation side that we very often do with workflow charts, but to humanize it a little bit and to really offer this kind of visual presentation of customer journey. What happens before the service, before our service? How the customer find us? What are the so-called touch points where our service touches the customer? It can be poster, it can be website, it can be physical person, it can be signalizations. Somehow identifying these touch points give us also important information where customers are lost. And service itself, and then post-service is also very important aspect of this customer journey mapping. So I don't see any questions in chat. Feel free to put some questions. I hope you are still there. And if not, we can also keep the questions, of course, for the end. What happens after we learned? You remember from first etap was empathy. Second etap is the defining the problem. If we have a right problem, and it's Albert Einstein who said, if I would have just 60 minutes to solve a problem, I would use 55 minutes to define the problem and 5 minutes to find the solution. This is very essential quote and makes us often think, because indeed this time for researching on what the problem is should, so to say, have more appreciation in general. Sometimes, far too often, we spend time to search for the solution without knowing what this solution is the answer for what kind of problem. If toaster is a solution, what is the problem? If digital app, if mobility app is a solution, Mobilitate, for example, then what is the problem? If driller is a solution, then what is the problem? So we can get this habit of asking ourselves this kind of question. Thank you for answering on chat. I'm happy that you are still there. I see we have more or less up to 8 minutes before the questions to come up through the whole process. So I'm speeding a little bit up to give you the full overview. Ideation, when we learned about the customer, it's much easier to come up with the idea. That's what Einstein tried to say. I need then just 5 minutes. If I have good basis, good knowledge, I need just 5 minutes to come up with the solutions. As you see here, we had a lot of ideas on post-its, and we usually initiate something what is called, and it's now more and more kind of exploited methods to collaborate with, participatory method of collaboration with clients, co-creation or co-design, we could say. Here we invited, as you maybe recognize, it's an X-Key restaurant here in Luxembourg, and we have invited customers to co-create together with the managers. So we see here one of the managers and 3 customers around the table. We were around 20 people to work on certain challenges to come up with new ideas. What is the result of such a co-creation session? Of course, ideas that come from the users, loyalty and respect of the users who appreciate that we invited them for co-creation. So usually clients and end users are very happy to give their opinions. They feel important and they want to tell us their pain, but also their gains, how they use our products. Here on the picture, we see the prototype. The prototype here, the group invented the app. That was the co-creation that we have done for the Ministry of Consumer Protection. It was a consumer dialogue day. We invited almost 50 consumers who, together with experts, draw solutions, first understanding the problem, and after drawing the potential solutions for a couple of challenges that we have in consumptions. How might we better inform consumers about their consumer rights? Here, the idea and the prototype was this kind of very rapid prototype of the application that can be potentially used in the future. I will jump to other examples of the prototypes, and also a question: why do we build this prototype, these physical representations of the ideas? As you see on the picture, we use very often paper, scissors, pens, so we start to sketch ideas. And we see that in many companies who employ a little bit more of design thinking, visual thinking, it becomes a habit to don't tell me your idea, draw it, how it would look like, what would be the steps, what would be the screens, what would be the functionalities. So we want to explore the concept together. Of course, we continue discussions. We communicate with others, especially if it's about team members from business and IT, for example. It's important to open our brains and let the ideas out, let them go into physical spaces. That was the prototype of the digital detox center. There was an idea coming from the youth sector, how to do the digital detox center where young people, but also adults would find it useful, I'm sure, could come for a weekend to rethink their connection to screens. And instead of describing what can happen there, we build it with Lego. Last but not least, the prototypes can be from lo-fi to hi-fi. We can imagine first that this kind of very simple application that is testing the flows, the flow and then the functionalities, becomes later on a little bit more developed prototype developed by UX designers. And last prototyping tool that we use very often is a storyboard. We can, if we have an idea for the service or product, we might very easily use this kind of storyboard template to divide our idea in sequences and draw it from the customer perspective. So how our user, our customer, our beneficiary can use our service, what should happen. Testing the ideas with the user is the final step in which we engage users. That was done internally in PwC, but we involved users into discussing about particular product. I will finish here. The question is, of course, we could talk about this for a couple of days to go a bit more in depth with the ideas and showing you more concrete examples. The answer for the question, how could we use design thinking tomorrow in our enterprises, or how can we make the creativity being present, creativity but with discipline. This is what very often this is how design thinking is described. It's creativity in the frame. As somebody mentioned, someone of you in chat, it's creativity in the frame, in the process. We have 5 steps. We can define what happens in each step and who is involved in it, so that the voice of the customer will be heard. Somebody advocates for the voice of customer, that we are able to facilitate also different workshop and creativity inside the company. And it's not done very often. Design thinking is a competence that is spread across the companies. It doesn't have to happen just in one design team. It's not responsibility only for a couple of people. And last but not least, we are living in very uncertain times, and in these uncertain times, we need very often rapid solutions. We need to be agile with coming with innovative offers, and we predict that it will be more and more needed. So let's become resilient, agile, and creative with big imagination. I will finish here, perhaps to move a little bit to questions. In the questions, I see Andrew is asking about if I apply design thinking in the garden. I apply a lot of co-creation in the garden, because indeed with very often, as a service design agency, we support other companies with putting this process into action. And very often we see that this is about communication, so much about communication. So I say that design thinking as a side effect makes also team collaborate a little bit better, makes people to talk to each other, makes people to understand for whom they are working. Very often, IT developers have zero contact with the user. They are not informed who the user is and what kind of problem they are solving. So logically, we could think, but why? Why? Maybe they would have also ideas that would contribute to developing better customer experience. So coming back, Andrew, to your question, it's the same in the garden, that immediately whenever you have to take decisions together to I didn't mention perhaps that I am a member of the urban garden here in Luxembourg, one of the urban gardens, and we have to make people communicate, take decisions like a small company, take decisions what we will plant when and how we will distribute the the surplus later on. So yes, there is always a question what the needs are, what people are thinking, what are their habits, and what for they are actually doing this gardening. Okay, I will finish here. Please go for some questions here in chat. I'm happy to answer.
So, Magdalena, there's at the moment there's no question, but it seems you still have a few slides.
I can go.
It's up to you. We got 9 minutes left. So it's up to you to decide while waiting for more questions.
Okay, why not?
You can carry on probably. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next slides answer a little bit the question. You might say, okay, we have done we got the point what design thinking is, and now how can we use it inside the organization? So it's again the question of where do we place innovation and creativity inside the organization, inside the company. And here we have an example from UX Planet. We have an example of 4 different ideas how it could be done. We can completely outsource innovation and say, okay, we employ the agency, they will do it for us. We can also create an internal innovation center and say, this is we have a department, creative department, they are dealing with innovation. We can also decide, let's spread this innovation competence. Let's train our staff in innovative tools like design thinking, for example. Just a sip of water, and make sure that they exist in parallel in different departments, and or big full moon, let's integrate innovation in organization culture. So set up completely the rules, management driven decision. Yes, this is going to be implemented everywhere. The Spanish bank BBVA took around 2015, I think, the big decision of training, of introducing design thinking competence across the whole company and implement design thinking projects, and offer to all the employees this possibility to be the ambassadors of this mindset, I would say, because design thinking is a mindset where that changes simply the approach to creating new services or products. So they would say each, maybe not each, but the employees would have a chance to go through design thinking express online course, e-learning, then design thinking fundamentals, 4-day course, and then the master class. And then producing knowledge and keeping the knowledge in the organization would allow to have this massive number of collaborators, plus 1,000 at the moment, who are trained in design thinking. That, of course, makes much easier adaptation of certain mindset, and then it reflects to the business operation. We know also this example from IBM, who also decided for us is essential to create this kind of loop. We see it very often in their promotional materials, where they say first we observe, then we reflect, and after we produce. So they give much more space to this user research, to understanding of the customer, in order to recreate the customer experience. So to bringing it down to earth, we create customer experience, not just in the closed room, but we really go a little bit outside. And very often we see, or maybe you have heard about the Google Ventures Design Sprint. This is a concept of creating some kind of creativity week, design sprint from Monday to Friday, analyzing, ideating, deciding what to create, then prototyping and testing new products or ideas. It's kind of a massive format with a significant time investment of multidisciplinary team. So we need to invite developers, but also marketing, also business analysts, product owners together to decide what new products could be. And it has also certain structure. We might say it's design thinking in 5 days. Couple of years ago, we have implemented some design sprints. We gave them up to design sprints that are a little bit more stretched in time. That means that we would go for one of pillar per week instead of per day. So the investment of 1 day per week was turned out to be more beneficiary. And then last but not least, we might always ask ourselves on which horizon of innovation we are, using this McKinsey model of three horizons of innovation. Are we working with something what is well known for us, with the products or services that we already know very well? Are we working on horizon 2 with something what is new to us, or are we working with something what is new to our industry? And their design thinking, and also I would add today futures thinking, because we live in the world of rapid changes, and we need to create services for customer of tomorrow, not only for customer of today. So we have to now reflect what our customer will live tomorrow with. Last but not least, like a muscle, your creative abilities will grow and strengthen with practice. So this is, I like this comparison to muscle. Creativity doesn't fall from heaven. It doesn't just happen. It is something what needs to be trained and trained. Here are my contact details. Feel free if you have further questions. I'm sure it was a little bit massive number of information, so feel free to contact me with further questions, resources, and yes.
Well, thank you, Magdalena. This was absolutely fascinating. I'm afraid that we do not have any question at the moment. Maybe one from me. regarding your last slide about creativity. How difficult could it be to integrate creativity in a very rigid environment such as some of the companies in Luxembourg?
If it would be difficult or not, that's the question. I'm full of hope. I believe in people, and I believe that we have all creative capacities. And as I already mentioned, creativity is thinking out of the box, and sometimes just creating condition for this is enough. So it needs to be
Exactly.
first step. Let's create conditions to be creative and to think differently, and that is a good starting point. And then I think that many organizations would follow.
Exactly. Very good answers. Okay. Well, no more questions, I think. So I hope you guys enjoyed that superb presentations from Magdalena. And I'll give you, I hope to see you next week for the final webinar regarding the cycle Qualité et innovations, where we'll discuss about how to create creativity, as a matter of fact. So thank you again. Thank you, Magdalena. And I wish you a very good day and a pleasant afternoon. All the best.
Thank you for you too, and thank you everyone.
Thank you. Ta-ta.